I see it is 12:30 on the dot. Uh, and we are ready to start now. We are. I see Melandia has a presentation ready for us also as well. So just as a quick introduction, Melandia is within the Center for Information Governance, and she will be taking us through navigating institution formation at Stellenbosch University. She'll just be providing us with the purpose on why we are or why individuals need to apply for institution permission or research as applicants, as well as take us through the process of applying and also give an indication of some useful tips on what you need to think of when you're applying, as well as the useful links and the links to the required documents or the institution permission website or page also as well. If you have any questions, please keep them for the end of the session. We will have more than enough time. And also, if you would like to, if you forget your questions, you're more than welcome to type them in the chat also as well. Malandi, if you are ready, we can kick it off and you may go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that you can see my camera and hear my very beautiful voice this morning or this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much. Firstly, I have to apologize. I've been drinking warm honey and lemon this entire morning, and it did not seem to help. I really do apologize. I know this is not fun to listen to, but let's hope that the content is more valuable. I do want to really thank the DRD for inviting us. This is a much needed presentation, much needed topic to discuss. And I appreciate that we can do it in the DRD's forum. So Clarissa, Aidan, and Sinozu, thank you so much. Um, we are recording this session, so I do just want to say that even though we are recording it, some things obviously might change within a few days, and this might not be the most relevant information. But as of today, this is the most relevant information. And I do have some data there, which probably after today won't be so accurate anymore. So that's just my mini disclaimer. So before we jump in, I would like to know, please use the react button. So if you are here because you actually just want to have a soundboard where you can raise your queries and your frustrations with institutional permissions, please react with a laugh. And if you are here because this is really a process that you need to understand and you are soon to be applying through this process, please react with a heart. Let's say the heart. So I'm looking for the laughs and the hearts in the audience. Okay, I see mostly hearts. I think that's a little optimistic, because I do understand that this is a sensitive topic. We've had some issues, but that's why we're facing it head on, making sure you know who to speak to and making sure that you are informed to understand the process as well. Because if you understand the process, hopefully we can get to a better quality applications, better turnarounds on our reviews. So we said unlocking access because that is essentially what gatekeepers permission is. I'll be using gatekeepers permission and institutional permission interchangeably until we get to the Stellenbosch University specific section. Gatekeepers permission is what the rest of the institutions use, or if you have to go to schools or so on, they may refer to it as gatekeepers permission as well. We in the university call it institutional permission because it's specific to our institution. As Aidan said, my name is Melandi. I am within the Center for Information Governance. And why I am doing this session is because I am the Learning and Development Officer for our center. That does not, however, limit my responsibilities. Recently, institutional permission was added to our responsibilities because we do not have a dedicated resource to this, and because we have so many very, very eager researchers that are in our university, the institutional permission applications has gone up very, very fast, and we have to jump in and just try and make sure that research can carry on without us being the hold up. And we are trying our best. So just a few quick outcomes. I do know this is a very long session that they've booked for us. I am really appreciative of this. I do, however, wonder if this is because afterwards they know there's going to be a lot of questions. So please feel free to hold your questions until the end. But if it is specific to a slide, you can add it to the chat. I do have visibility of our chat. So just a few quick highlights. We're going to first talk about what is the purpose of gatekeepers permission.
Yeah.
And this is not just locally for our university. This is the purpose of gatekeepers permission in our regulatory realm. Then we have what it is at Stellenbosch University. Then we have the criteria where you can just establish if you need institutional permission or not. And then we have the process. So this is going to be a space where we stand still for a little longer. I'm going to allow you to go through the process as well. And as you go through the process, I'll leave the board open for anyone to ask questions as they go through the process to make sure you understand where to click, you understand why these questions are being asked. And then I have a few tips. I put the carrot at the end of our stick today. I just have a few tips. These are things that we've come across, like various research projects that came across our desk. And these are just a few quick and easy tips that you can also incorporate into your research if it is relevant. And then right at the end, I added some resources. So throughout, I'll be referring to some resources that we have, and I'll be referring to some resources that the wider university network has, and that'll be right at the end. I have linked them as well, because I do know as researchers, you want to know exactly where this comes from and why this person is saying this. That's why I'm saying it. That will be right at the end. Okay. So let's jump into slide number 1. This is the purpose of gatekeepers permission. So this is a very, very, very full slide. I do not want you to necessarily go afterwards and remember all 8 of these principles, but this is the reason why institutional permission / gatekeepers permission exists in our wonderful South Africa. It's because of the POPI Act and its principles. This is one of the ways where we can make sure that our institution complies to the 8 POPI principles. So I'm just quickly going to go through them. This is in the PowerPoint, and you will receive the PowerPoint afterwards. And if you've been to any of my presentations, this is probably slide 1 in all of them. So this is just for you to understand the bigger picture of why we are here. We have the first principle, which is accountability, processing limitation, purpose specification, further processing limitation, information quality, openness, security safeguards, and then lastly, data subject participation. So what we do within our university, we actually go through all of these principles when we do institutional permission reviews. We don't just check a consent form. We don't just check that you actually apply for institutional permission and now you get it just because you sent an email. We go through all 8 these principles and we make sure that you as a researcher complies. So in POPI, this is why we as Stellenbosch University specifically also adopted this, is because this is obviously part of our greater legislation within South Africa. And this links to all privacy regulations. And we have to adhere to this to make sure that we protect in the end our staff and students and our institutional information. Here I quoted our regulation, the permission regulation, which is one of the first documents that I'm referring to. That's also linked at the end. So the permission regulation actually step by step explains the process as well. So this is a shortened version of our permission regulation. We have the Act, the POPI Act, which all of us have worked with, heard of, been in interaction with, and scarily enough, minute by minute, actually work with personal information. So this is something that we should be very much aware of. It was already established in 2013, came only into effect in 2021, or was compulsory in 2021. But this just shows that it's been here for a while. There's been some work going into this for a while already. And with considering the entire POPI, I just want you to also consider the fact that most of it is just good practice, just overall best practice for storing data, protecting data. Even you as a researcher do not want to lose the data that you collected. You don't want to process it in the wrong way to lose some information or some of its integrity. And that's basically what POPI does. It gives us some guidance on what would be best practice. And in the end, we tick a few more boxes on that. Then we have two bullets here also specified in the regulation, and it says researching university held personal information. So you need institutional permission before you do this, or if you're recruiting university students, staff, alumni, partners, and other stakeholders. So these also link to what we later will see as our criteria. We have this to comply with our privacy legislation. Within the university, we have also a few privacy regulations, and indirectly working with multiple regulations, multiple policies within the university. This regulation links with some of them. So this is not a standalone. We are working with, for example, the research ethics, research ethics specifically. We link to their policies as well. And we have this new SF code, which will be a SF code of conduct for POPIA and for researchers and POPIA. And that also gives us some guidance moving forward, which are probably would necessitate some changes within our environment again, within institutional permission again, and with ethics as well. So it's an ever-changing space, but we are trying to keep keep on the front end of it and just make sure that we can offer our researchers the best advice and get them to their research projects as soon as possible. And yeah, let's just stop there. So we now have the Stellenbosch University specific information, and this is the specific purpose of institutional permission within our university. Firstly, it is to give effect to the constitutional right of privacy. Secondly, it is to enable research, because that is in the end what we want to do. We are not here to say no, or we are not here to halt any research happening. Thirdly, we are here to complement the university's research ethics committee, advising them as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we plug into a few policies and procedures already. And then lastly, to manage the risks surrounding personal information processing, which is quite a big risk. And we are only two people. So there's quite a lot that needs to be done. But that's why we have the sessions to hopefully wake something up within Some of you guys, even if it is just planting a little seed or having you recognize something that you have to go check in your proposals or in your day-to-day work. So before we move on, this is some of you probably attended the DRD workshop end of last year. So this is just an overview of what happened last year and why it happened. We do not have all the answers, and I cannot give you any better information than this. If you do have questions about this, please feel free to share in the chat or ask afterwards. So this was the 2024 snapshots. This was the reason for institutional permission being on everyone's lips, not necessarily the sweetest taste on everyone's lips. So we, in our center, we are responsible for the Promotion of Access to Information Act and the promotion, the POPI Act. And that also links to breach handling the PIA requests that the university receives, learning and development that we have to do as a regulatory requirement within the entire university. And then we have those institutional permissions. Before last year, this was something that could have that was absorbed by the 3 permanent staff functions. Unfortunately, with the influx last year, we couldn't absorb it anymore because the capacity had to be moved to breaches and PIA handling and post-breach training and development sessions. So just to show you, just give you an idea, we have 2 permanent staff members, 1 vacancy, which we've unfortunately gone through round 3 of recruitment, and it was unsuccessful. We had 2 part-time students in training last year, which helped a little. And then you can see there the PIA requests that came in, data breach investigations, and then overall the permission requests on the right-hand side, up to 260 permission requests in total. So just to give you an idea, a breach investigation could take up to 3.5 weeks, full day work weeks, of 1 staff member, and we had to get external help in for those breach investigations as well. A permission request, if it is a back and forth of requesting information, it is a multi-phase project. It does take a very, very long time because there's a requesting information, going back to see what information was given. Then maybe in a month we receive the information, and then we actually have to go review the review to make sure we remember everything we reviewed. So it could take up to 3 working full days. And as you can see, we do not have a full-time resource dedicated to this. So in total, between all of us, we had less than 1 person, and this year we also have less than 1 person dedicated to this. But I will tell you in the next slide what we have done to try to make this better. We are already on 6 PIA requests, 6 data breach investigations. And as I was preparing for this just an hour ago to make sure my stats are up to date, I did not update that number though. We got another breach investigation, breach report this morning. Actually, 3 reports this morning. So before the last one, it was 6 this morning, and then we got the other one. We're already on 56 permission requests, and this was not even supposed to be our busy time yet. We work on an influx around April, May, and then right at the end of the year, October-ish. So that was interesting that we're already here. And then we are positively already on 25 completed and 15 in progress between primary and secondary review, which I'll also explain to you a little later. To show you what we've tried to do to mitigate the delay that happened last year and to make sure it does not happen again this year, because we do understand a delay of 6 weeks affects your research project and especially shorter research projects. So we have appointed a student assistant with experience, so no assistants in training anymore. We have a part-time dedicated resource from 1 April joining us until November, hopefully, if all goes well. So that's a very, very positive thing for us, because then we can get to the rest of our duties. We are investigating the integration with existing processes. I'm not sure how much information I am allowed to divulge on that yet. So, but we will definitely notify you once anything is in effect. It is multiple avenues that we are trying to investigate and just trying to find solutions wherever we go. Then we have updated our internal review process as we go along, as the regulatory environment change, as the cybersecurity environment changes, we have to make updates on our end as well. So we did. And one of the big updates was to also have a stricter turnaround time. We have already received emails of people requesting us to reopen their applications and stuff. Unfortunately, we had applications open last year for 6 months. And that was just because we have this attitude of we are going to help you as a researcher to get you over the line. We never want to say no for your research. We want to make sure you get there. And we are attempting this application in more of an advisory capacity to try and get you over the line. I had a chat with an external applicant yesterday, and she said she really appreciated the fact that we advised her to get over the line instead of just sending a letter to say that she is declined, the application is declined, and with a few reasons of why it was declined. So maybe that's our downfall. I don't know. We really thought that that would be the best way to go, just because our university is so focused on research and helping our researchers get over the line. But this year we do have a turnaround of asking for feedback until receiving feedback. That's at least 7 working days and a maximum of 14 days in total. So that's 10 working days. That is helping us a little, but unfortunately, some of the applications do get deferred, but it gives way for the applications that was complete from the beginning. We won't just defer for no reason, and we do ask information for specific reasons. So that's why we have the more strict turnaround. I'm not seeing any comments in the chat yet, so maybe you are all really here just to find out what the process looks like. But really feel free to ask us questions. We've been through this process thick and thin. It's like I'm really married to it through sickness and health. So yeah, so that's where we are. I think that's very positive to end with this section of the presentation, the PowerPoint here for the SU specific part, just to say that we are really, really trying to better the process. We are not just standing back and hoping that someone up there is making some changes. We are trying on the ground level to do what we can do. Okay, so number 3 on our outcomes was the criteria. How do you know when you have to apply for institutional permission? Sorry. Okay, so I only highlighted three bullets here because the 3 bullets link directly back to our regulation, the permission regulation, but also high level, this is it. This is it. Just ask yourself, question number 1, is it at Stellenbosch University? Yes or no? Yes. You need institutional permission. Well, let's ask number 2 and 3 first, and then you know. So question number 2 and 3 is, the number 2 is university held personal information or institutional information. So even though you are not collecting the data directly from the data participant, you are still working with university information. I know a lot of lecturers have access to a lot of information. That's also where you have to apply for institutional permission, even though you have access to their marks, even though you have access to more than just their marks, all their personal information. It is not to say that for research purposes, you are allowed to use that without institutional permission. The third point is collecting data from university students, staff, alumni, partners, and other stakeholders. So this is not just staff and students. It goes a little wider than that. It does, however, depend on how you are approaching them. Are you approaching them through Stellenbosch University? Is it because they are Stellenbosch University linked? So those are the things that we have to consider. I try to keep this as short as possible, as consumable as possible, because I do understand that not everyone's research is extremely technical. If it is extremely technical, please feel free to send us an email afterwards or ask me a question afterwards. But this covers most of your filter questions to understand if it is necessary or not. Okay. Any questions? Should we stand still for a moment? Let me allow a few minutes of questions before we go into the process, because that's going to take a little while. So do you have any questions of why we are doing this? Why you have to be doing this? I see there's a question. Dr. van der Bank.
Hallo Malandi.
Hi.
Gaan dit?
Goed en self.
Baie goed, dankie. Yeah, I want to ask quickly, with our honors projects, of course, there's a lot of, this is a very good kind of a pool for us that we can use students. And the honors projects are typically not published. And so if they were to use students in their research, do they need to go through this process also? And I probably think that the answer would be yes for that. But my next question then would be, what would be the turnaround time? I mean, with all the backlogs and everything, what kind of, I'm talking about the low risk study, what typically time kind of are we talking about?
Okay. So firstly, do you need to apply for this? Yes. I don't know if you remember, I did go through the slide very, very quickly, but the 8 principles of POPI, 2 of them are processing. So if you are processing any personal information, you do have to go through this, because it is personal information of Stellenbosch University specific information or university held personal information or data subjects. So yes, on question 1. Then question 2, the turnaround time. We are currently no backlog, which is great. We are working on a good application. Takes 4 weeks maximum. If it is a multi-phased application and we have to go a little back and forth with the applicant, it takes about 6 weeks. That's where we are currently.
Right. Okay, and then just on my first question, so it doesn't matter, you know, what the nature of the research is. Say it's, for example, just an anonymous survey to a small group of, say, first-year students, which could be our own students, and they complete the 7 questions anonymous with that. Yeah, and without it being published, for instance, it's part of the research project honors. Would that still apply?
Yes, it does. What you could do is you can do the personal information impact assessment, which we'll do a little later as well. In there, you'll see if it does tick some of the boxes or not. If it does not tick any of the boxes and this is 100% anonymous, you did mention that some information would still be collected. But let's say, for example, it is 100% anonymous information upon collection, then it might not be necessary. But if there's any chance of re-identification, it is necessary. And I do also want to note that going through this process also helps you in terms of, we check your consent form to your data participant to make sure that they are, it is transparent and they are fully informed. We check through your surveys or your data collection tools to make sure that you are also just collecting the minimum amount of information. So there are some benefits to going through the process, but if there's any chance to rather go for anonymous information, I mean, jump at it.
Thank you.
I see there's a question, Dr. Sali, does this also apply to doing research? Individuals registered for Sun online short courses? Yes, any university related information, definitely. That's very interesting. We haven't received an application for anything for Sun online short courses. Maybe I'll look out for yours then in the near future. I'll make 100% sure, but any organization linked with the university as well, we have to give the permission. If there's any information shared or recruitment done through alumni, it has to come through us. Yeah, so we kind of first entrance to the rest of the university when it comes to research and collecting the personal information. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Sali. Anyone else? Marley Rousseau, you can ask your question.
Hello, sorry, I hope you're doing well. Just a quick question, and maybe you are still going to touch on it, but I've received institutional permission, but I couldn't find how long it was valid for. So I received ethical clearance at another university, so I didn't have to go through ethical clearance here again, but I want to use Stellenbosch University students. So I did go through the process and I got my letter, but I was just curious because my supporting, what's it called? All my supporting documentation said that I was going to collect data until 2026. So I was just wondering if the institutional permission covers the whole period of the research proposal that I put in, or does it expire and I have to reapply? And what if I want to change something on my initial application? Do I have to issue or submit supporting evidence? So maybe it's two questions that I've asked. So the first one being the period, and the second one, what if there's adjustments?
Okay, so the first one, another way that we try to help our researchers is we do not have an expiration date, because we do understand that all research projects could take different lengths, different times to complete. So we do not actually have a date for the validity at all, but we do, however, consider that when the regulation could change, that would have to change. And if your research changes, you have to either apply for an amendment or do a new application. So most of the time we do a quick review on the site to establish if it is just an amendment or not. Very rarely we ask our researchers to do a new application, but if it is just an amendment, we just add it to the old, you create a new application, we link it to the old application, and we, for the existing application, and we just go make sure that the amendment still applies to the risk level and ticks all the other boxes that we have to look at.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify then, so I need to create a new application for a new, just a modification, something that I want to add to my application.
Yeah, like I say, rather email me first so we can
Okay.
make sure if an amendment is necessary. So that's permissions@sun.ac.za. Just email us first to make sure that it is actually necessary, and then I'll advise you to create a new one or not. Okay, because usually it is, if it's something like you, I don't know, changed your methodology a little bit, but it didn't really affect the personal information that you'll be collecting. For example, it was a phase that was more desktop research. Then maybe that's something we don't even see as a modification or an amendment. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Khan. What is the difference between ethical clearance and institutional permission? Wow, you guys, I realize I didn't even add this in here. Okay, we have this on our website as well to make sure that you understand the difference between the two, because I do understand as first-time researchers or first-time at university, this must be confusing to have two different applications. So let me quickly see if I can pull up the exact explanation on our website. It does not seem like I can get to it fast enough. But let's just do a high-level explanation then. Ethics application, they look more at the academic integrity and the ethics of the research process and the research in the end. And then what we do is we just protect our university's information. So it is a very small component of something that would link into your ethics application. So this is specifically is touching on anything Stellenbosch University. That's what we do. So that's why we call gatekeepers as well. So we have ethical clearance, which is also regulatory. Oh, Aiden
Yes.
says he would like to answer.
No, you answered it very well, and I appreciate that also, Malandi. I just wanted to reiterate that ethics clearance is not permission. So permission and ethics clearance are two different things. So if you can also look at it from the perspective, for example, if you are also going to do or apply for permission from the WCED or any other organization or any other company also as well. So therefore, you need ethics clearance and you need permission also as well to access those individuals. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's good that you not mentioned that. I did mention earlier that gatekeepers permission is the words that they use if you go anywhere else. But I mean, if you do research on schools, on other organization, you also need a gatekeeper's permission there to be able to access and connect with them. So that's kind of what institutional permissions does in Stellenbosch University. Okay, good. Okay, I think let's move on to the process, because I do believe this would be value adding to most of you. Once again, I just tried to do this as high level as possible, as consumable as possible. And then if need be, we can go a little more into depth. I'll allow you to do some of the steps as we are in this session to give you some time to ask questions to understand the process and make sure you are familiar with it. So here we go into the process. So this was just a high-level summary of what our process is. So number one is we receive the application. And then this is a step that we had to bring in, monitoring applications, because our application process is not compulsory. Not all the questions needs to be completed. We are getting some applications that's half or not addressing all the data privacy information or attachments or anything that we need. So we started monitoring, which is now unfortunately adding an extra step, but it makes sure that our primary reviewers get a complete application. So you'll receive a message saying, you do the application, you get an automatic message saying, please make sure that you did add all of these pieces of information or attachments. And then we'll have someone afterwards monitoring, making sure all the attachments are there and that the information that we believe would normally be in a proposal is actually in the proposal as well. And then we'll ask the extra question to make sure that by the time it gets to the primary reviewer, it is complete. When we do get complete applications, like I mentioned earlier to Dr. van der Bank, is it does shorten our review time, because what makes it longer is if we have to go back and forth and ask for outstanding information or for clarification. So if it is already complete by this stage, it makes the review time a little shorter. Then we assign it to a primary reviewer, which is the role that would do the more in-depth review. We have a two-review system for governance, obviously. So the first person will do the more in-depth review. We have specific outcomes that we look at. We have an internal document that we have to complete, which I'll unpack for you in the next slide as well. And then once they are assigned, they do their review. They spend quite a lot of time on this because they are the more in-depth reviewer. Then once they only can approve, they will give this to the secondary reviewer or approve with modifications. Very rarely we allow it to stand with approve with modifications, because we cannot allow something to stand over if, for example, the consent form is not compliant. So we have to wait for the applicant to send the updated consent form back, and then only they can approve. Then they approve and they share it with the secondary reviewer. Secondary reviewer does a full review of the internal documents that we have to make sure that they agree with everything. The secondary reviewer will also check the data collection method and the consent form. Those are the two important things that we have that second eye on. And then in some cases, unfortunately, we need a full secondary review when the project is more technical or it's a multi-phased project. We do a full secondary review, which also takes a little more time. Then once it is approved by both reviewers, it goes to our colleague who prepares the approval letters, shares them with you, and then gets the acceptance. Some of you who've received institutional permission understands that this is what happened. So you just get this letter, which is an agreement, which just, if you share with us afterwards via message to say that you accept and agree to this, it is a legally binding document. In the document, we also have a lot of information for you moving forward, some things to consider, some things that we have already considered through the review process, but just things that you have to, as a researcher, which is your responsibility to keep in mind. So that's our process. It is a little longer than other institutions. We have compared ourselves with a few other institutions, and we get some where you just send an email, you just ask for permission and you get it. You get some where you just have to complete one A4 document, and once again, basically just because you ask, you get it. So perhaps it's because we really do value our staff and students, that we really do want to protect their personal information, and we really do take our privacy responsibilities seriously within this institution, and we have seen what could happen if we do not follow this process. Then, to unpack the primary review, this is now also linking to our internal documentation, which we do. First thing is we have to do the preliminary personal information impact assessment. I get a show of hands how many of you have done this or seen this on our website or had to do it as part of your ethics application. I have one person. Okay, so I think it would be good to stand still at that point then. I'm going to give you the link to our this one links directly to the document that's on our website. And then I could also quickly attach the document. If it would allow me. So take a few minutes and go through this document. Make sure you understand everything and test it on if you have a proposal or you have a research project happening now, test it on that or test it on some other business process. If you are working on a new system or you are working with some new information due to our systems changing within our university, quickly test it on that and see if you are comfortable with this this document. It also gives you a lot of information on what to consider when working with personal information. I cannot seem to attach it. Let me know if you can get it through the link, if it's working for everyone. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to give you until 25 past to complete it. And for those of you who want to take a health break, now is your time. I will be here the entire time to answer questions if you have any. You'll see in the chat, I added the difference between institutional permission and ethical clearance as well. This is linked to our website if you want to save that for future use. Okay, Dr. van der Bank, that's the best outcome you can get, a 0 on the assessment. Just have to make sure that this is upon collection, upon the first time working with the data. It is 100% anonymous. The researcher does not touch anything that's not anonymous. Then you do not need institutional permission. But we have to make sure that it's with the explanation says with little to no inherent or residual privacy risks. So that it has to be 100% anonymous. This could be, for example, information that comes through our data repository, or, for example, the aggregated data that's already been processed with no identifiers in them. Then it could be that you do not need institutional permission. Okay, any other questions on this form? It is quite a new form that we have, new strategy that we've tried. We are sharing the presentation afterwards. Aidan will share that with you. like I say, the chances that you need institutional permission is very low. Perhaps send me an email with a little more detail or with the reference number of your application, and I can just make sure that it is necessary. But yeah, let's talk offline about this one specifically, because there is a reason why you applied. So I just want to make sure that I have all the details of the project before making the call for you.
Yeah, okay, so this is actually more a general question because I oversee our honors projects, and so I just want to be proactive about that.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking in terms of the actual, clicking on the system when you apply for your ethical clearance. So I would still choose the option. I would, just by indicating that we're going to use students, I would need to, tick the option, obviously, for the institutional
Okay.
for the permission. But once I've then indicated these options, what would kind of happen? Would it like automatically tell me that I don't need to wait for anything, or would you receive something?
I think perhaps what could be the reason with your application could be that the information is not publicly available. Could that be it?
So, but but I haven't done it yet. This is just to kind of understand what would happen on the system once you've ticked that option.
Yeah, it would have to be you'll have to get an agreement from us then.
Okay, so it would probably generate like kind of an automatic message or letter that say, I do not need to wait. I'm just worried about that one would still need to wait for the 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand, because the project, obviously, an honors project is much shorter. If let's say this, if it is not publicly available, the data, you'll have to go through the application process. If it is publicly available, so it is, for example, on our dashboards, or it is somewhere on the website publicly available, you don't need institutional permission. But if you have to go through like a second gate to get permission, you have to ask a second person access or whatever, then you'll have to go through the institutional permission process. Go and evaluate and make sure that there's no way to rather use public information. Do yourselves a favor and go to our dashboards. I'll see if I can find it when we do our next exercise, and link it to you here. So maybe there's some data that you could use already, but if there's anything else that you have to go like through a second gate, for lack of a better metaphor, you'll have to do institutional permission.
Yeah, so this is not public data. It would be for, this is kind of a general question, but just using students as our pool. So
yeah, you'll have to go through us.
Yeah.
Even though it is colleagues or classmates.
Yeah, but if you then go that route and you still score a 0, so my question is, do you still need to wait kind of for the full turnaround time, or is there kind of a way in which one will get quicker feedback because there doesn't seem to be any risk or leak of information or anything of that sort?
Our reviews definitely go faster if it's a minimal or low risk review, because there's obviously less considerations around the data protection and processing. So it does go faster. We unfortunately do not have separate processes. That is also something that we are investigating for the future, to get a separate process for low risk and for the others.
Okay, Melanie, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it. Any other questions on this document? Okay, so this document is a good test for you to also, like Dr. Van der Bank is now saying, it is minimal. This is a good assessment for you to do to check what if I can get it as minimal as possible, or why is my application so high risk? So let me just quickly go see what could be the reasons for it to be high risk. It does have a lot of information. It is a very big document for the purpose, but it's because we wanted to inform you and empower you with the information before just telling you it's a high risk or not. So this gives you more context around why it would be elevated to a higher risk. For example, we get applications where something like race is collected, which is obviously bumps it up to a higher bracket of risk level because it is seen as special personal information within the POPI Act. If race does not link directly to your outcomes of your project, is it truly necessary? Is it truly necessary for you to ask this indicator? In health, it also links to mental health. If you ask someone, how did they experience this? We have to tick the box of saying that you are collecting health information. So, yeah, use this moving forward. This is also one of our first steps when we do our review, internal review, is we do this as well. So we go look at the one that you've done before and we have a look at this one to make sure that it was inherent risk. So as I mentioned before, it has to be upon first glance of the data. What is this stuff? What do you have access to? I know we are anonymizing. I know there's some extra controls that we can do, add afterwards, but this evaluation has to be done upon collection, upon first glance, before any interventions. Philosophical beliefs as special personal information. That's also part of the part of number 2 on page 3. If anyone else wants to also have a look there. So that could be yeah, something political. It could be the thing is with these is POPI gives us so much space for interpretation. What I will do is I'll go look up the specific definition for you, and I'll share that with you afterwards in the chat. So you have the specific explanation, because I assume this touches on something that you are researching. Let's just make a note there. I'll get you the exact definition from the POPI Act. I did also link the POPI Act in the end of my presentation, which you can investigate further and just familiarize yourself with it if you would like. I see another question. If the data is collected for monitoring and evaluation report for a funder of a group of students, and the funder explicitly wants race demographic, although not linked to the outcome, is it still high risk? Please work through the bursaries and loans office. I believe you are working, Dr. Hanakom, with the bursaries and loan office, where we make sure that this was part of the initial agreement. If it was part of the initial agreement, we do have to provide this information. So in those cases, we do allow providing the information, but it's because there's an agreement in place. You'll also see this document references on page 5, number 7, the second bullet. It kind of references that there was no agreement in place. So having an agreement in place gives that protection of what the information would be used for. So just make sure that there is this agreement in place, and most likely working with the bursaries and loan office, they're also a little more familiar with the agreements that would be in place. Okay, is it possible to obtain blanket permission for an institutional-wide project? Would the application and review process be the same? when you guys say blanket approval, it's for me, it's because blanket can be very big. This can be a very big blanket. We'll have to take this case by case basis. I am working with it with another researcher where we are seeing if this is a possibility. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, our permission expires once the data collection processes changes or anything regarding the personal information changes. So then most likely amendments will be necessary. Unless you know exactly what you would like to do from the beginning and you can apply for everything from the beginning. But we do have to review specific documents, which in the next slide, I'll show you which documents we review, which will have to be added to the amendments. Not having a project title or research topic yet, that doesn't bother us. By the time you do get one, we'll have to just add it to the agreement. It does not change anything to our review. It's just something that we use as a reference moving forward. But we also have our reference numbers, which we use. So once you have it updated, we'll just add that to the agreement and then you can accept the agreement. Okay, good. All questions answered. Thank you for your questions. I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate the interaction. Otherwise, this would have been a very boring session for everyone. So let's quickly go to number 2, where we have the documents that we review. This is also the checklist for our monitor, which is the full research proposal. We need proof of ethics approval or proof of application. It doesn't have to be within our university. It could be external ethics application. Then the privacy impact self-assessment, which we just did. Add that to the application, then the data collection mechanisms and the informed consent documentation where applicable. So that's just a list of the documents. We believe most of the information we look for would be in these documents. But sometimes we have different types of projects where we have different things to consider. So that's why I made this list for the internal review. This is extra documentation that we have to sometimes consult, which we would ask the applicant to upload. And these form part of the picture that goes out to the data participant, the message that the participant would receive, the processing of the information, and then the protection of the information. So firstly, we look at your research methodology. If you have a research methodology space in your proposal, section in your proposal, we look for what's the different phases within it, what's the actual methods that you'll be following. Then we look at the population. Obviously, we need to make sure that this is Stellenbosch University specific. We check that again to make sure you do need institutional permission. And then we make sure that the population is something that we can provide. We have just a few indicators within the university which we can provide when we do how, let's say, for example, I have to distribute or get the database for you to be able to use one of the university survey platforms to distribute to. We have to keep in mind what's the type of indicators that we have in the university. Then the selection and recruitment process. So that is what material, the first message that goes out to a potential participant. Would they be 100% informed for what they are signing up for? Is your recruitment process kosher, or is there something that is perhaps a little more an intimidating type of situation where we have lecturer to students or a weird dynamic? We just want to make sure that there is, it could be 100% informed consent. Then we have the consent form and the process. We want to know where in the process do you actually provide the consent form to the person. Do you invite them to a focus group and then in front of 8 other people, they have to read the consent form first before they can continue? And there's kind of this intimidation factor of everyone else already signed and no one else is actually reading through the consent. So why should I read through the consent form? We want to allow them time to go through it at their own pace and then have the ability to ask questions. Those are things that we consider when it comes to consent. One of our questions is the consent process, what's the word? Reasonable. Is the consent process reasonable? And we see it as reasonable if the person had chance beforehand. Is it plain language English when you work with, let's say, non-senior academics? So those are the things that we consider there. Data collection, we look at the tools that you use and the specific platforms, which should be all the platforms that you use for collection. And then data processing, any anonymization that you are implementing, any specific software that you are using for processing practices, the transport of data, if it was physical documents, what is your plan to protect the physical documents from the, let's say, for example, the focus group where you made the notes to your car, to the safe that you'll be putting it in. This sounds ridiculous, but this is some things that we have to consider because last year this was one of our breaches, was unfortunately a car was, the bag was stolen out of a car. So another thing that we had to add to our checklist was the transport of physical documents. And then further processing. Did you add into your consent form that if you apply to a journal, this data might be required by the journal to make sure that the research was done right? Are there any further processing, for example, sharing it internationally or sharing it with other research partners? Then the data protection, what software are you using and how long are your what's your retention plan on this? And then obviously which hardware you are using. If you are using a hardware, is it password protected? These are the things that we consider. Some of these things, yeah, let's go to the tips and then I'll share some of those insights with you. So this is the most important space for hopefully some of you. These are just things that I could think of in preparation for this session. So minimality, I've mentioned this before, keep the personal information processing to an absolute minimum. That's why I allowed you time to go through the preliminary personal information impact assessment, where you can evaluate and make sure that this is low risk information or low risk research project. And if it is not, make sure you can back exactly each piece of extra information that you are collecting, and you can link them to your research purpose, link them to your outcomes, and justify exactly why that piece of information is being collected. This is not a practice that we have applied yet within our university, but this is a recommendation coming from the ASAF code, and which is a GDPR recommendation already. So this is something you can keep in mind so long when you do identify the information that you'll be collecting. So minimality, first thing, then secondly, transparency. I mentioned this. Sharing the consent forms with the participants beforehand ensures transparency. Through the bank, sorry, thinking in Afrikaans and speaking in English. Unfortunately, the translation has to be direct. We'll always recommend make sure the consent form is shared with the participant beforehand. If it's not possible, we understand and we take that by a case-by-case basis. Third is the software. So this is something that I realize our researchers we do not know. So that's why I added this here. This is a big one for me. If you are not using something within our ICT toolbox, if you are not using Teams for collecting data, for sharing a survey, Sun survey, rate gap, if you're not using OneDrive or SharePoint as your storage space, go and have a look at this ICT toolbox. I have that linked in the last slide as well. Make sure whatever you are using is there. If it is not, once again, we're not saying sorry, you can't pursue your research, because I do understand there's some platforms that work better for specific pieces of for specific research projects. You'll have to do the application through the RDM advisory board, also linked in the last slide. They do an evaluation, because usually we would have to go through the privacy policies of the different applications or software or programs or whatever you guys are using, and that would delay the process on our side. So we have the RDM advisory board, which is hosted by our ICT research, and they consult with various participants in the university, which is us as well, to make sure that you are allowed to use this, or what protection we can put in place to make sure that this is still protecting our staff and students and institutional data. This is not being unreasonable. We have seen some programs hosted in countries that do not value privacy, and they do not have a regulation in place, which exposes our data participants. We also have some spaces where there's no agreement in place to share this data internationally, and that does not comply with POPI Act. So that's why we have to consider this as well. We would, however, advise you when we get to this space, but I'd rather advise you starting with this process beforehand, before going down the other routes as well, because it can happen in parallel. Then security safeguards. We recommend separating the identifiable information from the data where possible. So if possible, before sharing your data, let's say, for example, with the research assistant that will be processing, or working with your data, de-identify it beforehand, and you make sure you, as the principal investigator, do the de-identification. If you perhaps have a survey and you would also have a lucky draw at the end of the survey, have a second survey linking from the end of your first survey, have them link, specifically opting in to submit their details for the lucky draw, and then you have that identifiable information in a separate space. And that separate space, once the lucky draw is done, can obviously be deleted. And this is your anonymous data that you have collected, and there's no re-identification risk when you do it this way. So those are just two pieces of advice that we have. And then the detail, if it is a phased project, people, you guys are complicating things. Like I mentioned earlier, we have to consider the population, we have to consider the processing, we have to consider the safety, and we have to consider the consent. All four of these has to be done with each phase of your research as well. So please make sure that you have it in clear detail. What's the method that you are using? What's the specific population? How are you recruiting them? Where's their consent? All those specific considerations, please. And that is it. Then we have our resources, and then we can get, this is just a snapshot of what our service desk looks like. The option in the left-hand bottom would be most likely the one that you choose. This is internal institutional permission. And then if you are doing your project through an external university, you'll have to apply for external institutional permission. We'll note that you are internal, but unfortunately there is some different considerations when it comes to an internal and an external applicant, because the data will be moved outside of our university space. Okay, that's it. Now I'm done. I'm going to go to the chat to see the questions there. It's a very long question, so sorry, just give me a moment to read through it. The research participants are not linked to Stellenbosch University, then you do not need gatekeepers permission from us. You do not need institutional permission from us. That is from Dr. Hughes. The data collected from Stellenbosch University or Stellenbosch University related participants, or let's say data subjects, then yes. If not, no. But perhaps just make sure you have all the gatekeepers permissions from other environments that you are working with. If it is at the hospital, you'll probably need gatekeepers permission from them. Doesn't your review process duplicate what ethics committees do? So Prof. Ter Blanche, this is one of our first potential integration spaces that we are looking at. We are really, really hoping that this would be successful, because a lot of the data that we have to look at are already collected in our SPE reg application form. We have done the comparison already. We have also compared it to the HREG application form. It does look very good, but I cannot speak for the rest of the process. We are just in consultation phase now. So we can't make any promises yet, but our promise is that we will try and do better every time, and we will try and better the process as far as we go along, as far as we are here and capable. I will have to watch the rest on recording, 100%. Thank you. Okay, I see that's all the questions. If anyone else have a question, please, we have another 6 minutes. But for the rest of you that need to go and just take a break before you head into the next class, this is it. Thank you so much for this time. And yeah, thank you. I do understand this was a very long time, but I do hope that this was value adding for those that attended. Please feel free to ask us questions afterwards. I'll share our email address for permissions in the chat. Thank you.
I'm Alani.
Yes.
If you still have time, I might
Yes, I
have two
do.
questions possibly.
Yes.
The one question is specifically if I'm applying for institutional permission, and does that institutional permission also cover the Tygerberg campus as well as the military campus as well?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we cover
And
all campuses, all faculties, all degree levels, everything.
And then the second question also as well, which might also be helpful to some of the participants in it, is also as well. If I want access to Stellenbosch University online pages, for example, the Facebook pages or the Instagram pages also as well, do I need to apply for institutional permission in order to access those individuals?
Aiden, you know, this was actually a topic that came up in the DRD's workshop last year. I remember specifically because Cassie was very passionate about this. We do not, this is a sticky one. So it's just access social media content. The university does not have a stance on if social media is private or not. Poppy has not given us guidance on this either. I'll have to go and make sure what our stance on that specifically would be, because we'll have to obviously make a call university-wide. But this is probably something like, if you are already attempting this, rather go to the specific managers of those pages and make sure what their stance on it is, because they are the ones in the end ultimately responsible for the data used on it.
Thank you, Melanie. I think we've come to the end of the session. If there's no other questions, then we may end the session. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone's time. Have a good day.